on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, for an effortless finish to your day. New Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
This is News Talk.
Well, a year ago, Naomi Osaka was at the centre of global media storm. A year on, after her exit from the French Open early doors, she's now saying she may not play Wimbledon. Caitlin Thompson of Racket magazine is going to talk to us about an interesting 12 months in Naomi Osaka's life. That's this hour. After 8 o'clock, Tommy Welch with us on certainly concerns over Kilkenny heading into a Leinster final on the back of 2 defeats, and what went wrong in Waterford, the big question in the championship thus far. Damien Delaney will be with us after 9 o'clock. He will be reflecting on the Premier League season that was. He will be talking about the Champions League final that will be this Saturday. So that's on the way between 9 and 10. 53106, the text number. We're at Off the Ball on Twitter. Cathal Mullaney here for the Newsround. Cathal, hello.
Hey, Joe.
And Mick McCarthy in studio. Michael, what's happening?
How are you, Joe?
I'm very well. Caitlin Thompson with us of Racket magazine this hour, talking about Naomi Osaka, who has put her participation at Wimbledon into doubt. The lack of ranking points, seemingly the big motivation for her, and she enjoys seeing her ranking points go up, and so she may not play. And well, we thought she's had a pretty interesting year, Naomi Osaka, and Caitlin Thompson going to join us to talk about a complicated character.
Really complicated and really interesting. I think consistently interesting. And there's so much more to talk about with Naomi Osaka than the thing that's really rankled with me today. And we'll get into all of it. But I can't get out of my head a top ranked, top level sports person making the type of comment that she did yesterday, which about ranking points seemingly meaning more than a Wimbledon championship, a major championship. It's not a political statement she's making. She didn't say anything about Russian and Belarusian athletes not being allowed into Wimbledon. It was purely just, look, I like my ranking points. And it's, hold on a second. Why do you have ranking points? To be at the top rank so you can compete in Grand Slam championships or the biggest tournaments. It's like nobody's going to care that you were world number one. They'll care about how many Wimbledons and French Opens and Australians and so on you have. I actually couldn't believe it. And I think there's a special case in Naomi Osaka, of course, that we'll get into with Caitlin at 7:30. But there's also a part of me that thinks, is this modern sport that we're just focusing on the wrong things constantly? And numbers are more important than, as I got 15 assists and, 3 pre-assists and 4 goals this season. So I was involved in... I've lost my maths there, but what's that? Does that add up to 20? Something like that. I was involved in 20 goals. So I'm reaching here, I think, in terms of a link, but that's where my brain immediately went. It was like, the game's gone.
I think it's so specific to her.
Yeah.
Not to say there aren't
elements of
stats and obsession with stats in the game, but even her rationale, because on the one hand she said, I would love to go just to get some experience on grass. Her main surface is hard court. That's where she's won her 4 Grand Slams. She's never been beyond the 3rd round at Wimbledon or the French Open. And so she said, I'd love to go just to get some experience on the grass. But then in the same breath she said, I don't want to say it's pointless, no pun intended. Yeah. Got a giggle. But I'm motivated by ranking points going up. And so without ranking points, for me, it's a bit pointless to go there.
Pointless. Wimbledon.
I know.
Think about.
But also, if you want, I'd love to get some experience on grass. That's the definition of just doing it for the experience. That's not even about winning. And yet, well, if there's no ranking points, I'm not going to do it. So, I think there is a degree as well with Osaka. The press at large are extremely wary of upsetting her. Mm-hmm. Therefore, nobody put up their hand and said, contradictory, Naomi. Like you said, you want the experience on grass. And it's not about the points. And then literally you've said it's about the points. So lifting the trophy, well, it's not that significant to me. I want my ranking points. Or do you want the experience? Or which is it? So
I think that's a very fair point.
Nobody did that.
Eggshells when it comes to Osaka, absolutely.
And maybe that's appropriate. Maybe that is appropriate. But it's absolutely a feature which I don't think is there necessarily with lots of other sports people.
Do you know one thing? Can I just move off slightly just on tennis in general? The whole "that's not my court, that's my court" thing. It's when you hear that from. Now I know she hasn't directly said that, but that's kind of the sense we're getting. We've heard it from other players in the past. It really annoys me. That's not my place. That's not my place. You look at Rafa Nadal winning French Opens but like in his sleep in the early part of his career, and worked his ass off to become a Wimbledon player. And you remember that, like the final that finished in the dead of night against Federer in 5 sets, and then after that, like, became nearly unbeatable on grass, even though it wasn't his surface. The top people know how to win on all courts, and they work their ass off. It's not easy for them. It's obviously they have natural advantages, but I feel that's too many tennis players kind of accept, I'm a clay court player, I'm a hard court player, grass doesn't suit me. Nonsense. It's all the same sport.
Nonsense. It's a very Roy Keane nonsense.
It's all the same sport. Come on. Ball bounces differently. Adapt your game. It's like golfers who won't play on links courses or in windy conditions.
That's the thing, though.
But why? I don't mind that it's a thing in terms of your natural game, but overcome it. Can't say, I'm out of this tournament now. It's on a links course. No point in me going over to the British Open.
Oh, you've been a bit harsh. Like Federer won one French Open.
Yeah, got to a couple of finals.
And it was only because Rafa
Nadal at the
injured.
same time as him.
It was only because Nadal was injured he won it. So would you say a Federer if he hadn't won that French Open? Come on. Adapt your game.
I never felt that he tried to win a French Open, I'd probably say that, yeah.
Yeah, fair
and
enough.
he also existed at the time of the greatest clay court player of all time and that we will ever see.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Certainly in golf, there's the stereotype of the fair weather Americans coming over to the British Open, taking one look at the sky and saying, what time's my flight home on Friday?
On Friday, yeah, exactly.
Get me out of here. This hellhole. The food, it's disgusting. So we should press on, and Cathal, you are starting the news round, which is, as ever, brought to you with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. You are starting with the action on the court.
Yes, and number 2 seed Daniil Medvedev is into the second round of the men's singles at the French Open after beating Argentina's Facundo Bagnis in straight sets earlier today. He dropped just 6 games in what was a comfortable win. Elsewhere, 4th seed Stefanos Tsitsipas is due to be in action this evening against Lorenzo Musetti of Italy. In the women's singles, meanwhile, 3rd seed Paola Badosa was a straight sets winner over Fiona Ferro. That game concluded just a short while ago, while Simona Halep is currently in action, and she currently has a 1-0 lead in her match this evening against Natasja Schunk of Germany. Meanwhile, speaking after his win earlier today, Medvedev addressed the controversy surrounding Wimbledon this summer. The US Open champion is the biggest name to be excluded from the Grand Slam following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The removal of points means Medvedev is set to move above Novak Djokovic to the top of the world standings without even playing at the event, and he acknowledged today that it's a strange situation.
I would be really happy to play Wimbledon. I love Wimbledon. I love playing on grass. Well, I will play on grass after Roland Garros. But if I cannot, just going to prepare for next tournaments and, just follow what's happening there. And if there are no points, I become number 1. Well, great for me. If there are points and I cannot become number 1 because of it, of course, I'm going to be gutted. But it is what it is. I cannot change some decisions.
Munster?
Yeah, Munster injury news today. They've confirmed that back row Jack Daly has suffered a cruciate ligament injury. He suffered the knock in Saturday's defeat to Leinster. He's now set to see a specialist. Meanwhile, Andrew Conway aggravated a knee injury at the Aviva Stadium. He'll be assessed this week. Sean Klein has a neck problem. Alex Kendallen is undergoing the return to play protocols. In better news, though, for the province, both Craig Casey and Stephen Archer will return to training this week following their respective illnesses. And Peter O'Mahony, Damien Dialende and Simon Zebo are all set to return to full training this week. Munster play Ulster in the United Rugby Championship quarter-finals on Friday week.
There's boxing ongoing at the moment?
Yeah, and Irish interest in Armenia as well at the Men's European Boxing Championships. Luke Maguire through to the last 16. He overcame Polish fighter Daniel Petrovsky earlier today in the light middleweight competition, while Belfast bantamweight Dylan Eagleson is through to the quarterfinals in his section after beating Mohamed Sachli of Turkey earlier today. Both of those wins through a unanimous decision. Brandon McCarthy, though, is out. He suffered defeat to Joseph Tyres of England. That was in their last 32 light welterweight bout this afternoon.
Tim says Osaka hasn't been past the second week of Wimbledon. Feels like there's more to it than ranking points. Yeah, very possibly. I know Caitlin Thompson with us says there's a degree of eye rolling amongst certain players on the back of Osaka's interview yesterday. Brian says, do you not think Seamus Power was happy to get inside the top 50 to get to the Masters invite? Seems to have gone on from strength to strength from those points.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely, Brian. But he didn't go to the Masters thinking, think of all the ranking points I'm going to get. I mean, the 4 majors, the 4 Grand Slams in tennis are the pinnacle in their own right. You don't go to those for ranking points, I think, is the point. You certainly wouldn't participate at Wimbledon because of the lack of ranking points, I think.
I think Brian actually inadvertently made my point better than I did, than I actually did earlier, which was that the ranking points, the reason they're important is to make sure that you're in a good situation, be it a seeding or whatever it is for the big tournaments, you know, which is exactly like Seamus Power making the top 50 was actually more about him playing the Masters than it was about him being in the top 50 players in the world.
Yeah. Kurt Zouma then?
Yeah, the West Ham defender Kurt Zouma has pleaded guilty to kicking and slapping his cat. The 27-year-old admitted 2 offences under the Animal Welfare Act at Thames Magistrate Court earlier today. It comes after footage circulated of Zouma on social media in February of this year. The video was filmed by Zouma's brother Johan, who has admitted to 1 offence during the hearing, which followed an RSPCA investigation, and sentencing has been adjourned until June the 1st.
Yeah, that was a story that really caught fire, wasn't it? February.
Yeah.
I mean, I distinctly remember Graham Souness really going to town on Sunday, like saying things like, from what I can see, the cat didn't do anything.
Sorry, I didn't.
Which, you know, it's just, it got to that level.
I didn't mean to laugh at that. I remember being like very surprised. Actually, Graham Souness was one of the people that came out of that story. Like, people were hearing about his veganism and everything like that. I don't think anybody realised at the time, but my God, it was like, actually, I genuinely didn't mean to laugh at that, because I don't think it's a funny story at all. I thought there was some overreaction in terms of like the abuse he got and different things that, like, people have done things that are deplorable in the past, but like it does feel like 100 years ago as well, you know.
No, it's funny because like the line was just so. It's just not something you hear Graham Souness saying ever. The cat did nothing.
As far as he could see.
Yeah, as far as I can see. And equally, if the cat had done something, that wouldn't make it okay, you know. It's just one of those conversations. So, well, there's not much we can say about it until sentencing. Yeah, when was that? February this year. Like, it's been difficult for Zouma. It's properly, not that I'm saying I'm overly sympathetic. Obviously, there was always going to be repercussions, but I think he's probably found it very, very difficult. And it's the thing, we said it at the time, it's the thing that follows him around now for the rest of his career in every stadium.
There is, yeah. I think it was amplified so much by Moyes picking him the next week, almost as a, you know, it was a real determined kind of, I'm not going to be bullied into this. And all he needed to do was sit him down. I think that story would have went away. I think by the time, if he played a midweek match, you know, a week and a half later, I just don't think it would have had. It got a second life, and that second life, I think, is the one we remember in some ways. Yeah,
we should totally chat to Souness some night about his veganism and this awakening he's had with regard to animal rights.
Yeah, because one of the most famous pictures I can ever remember of Graham Souness is him in a massive fur coat and an umbrella from the 1970s or 80s. It's a great picture, in fairness, but it doesn't seem like he'd be someone that'd be wearing a fur coat these days.
No, I mean, major evolution. Very interesting. He had 3 years vegan. And he was, I remember there was an interview he did where he talked about just his horror at the way we treat animals. And you see scenes from abattoirs and different facilities, I suppose, for want of a better word. And it's hard not to have your stomach turned. So
turn you off your chicken burgers.
He would be interesting some night on that, Graham Souness. Like, another complex man, interesting man. So anyway, that's Kurt Zouma. We have Gareth Southgate talking today.
Yeah, that's right. West Ham's Jarabone and Leicester fullback James Justin have been called up to England's senior squad for the first time. Tyrone Mings, Luke Shaw and Emile Smith-Rowe are among those to miss out. Liverpool captain Jordan Henderson also not part of the squad. England face Hungary, Germany and Italy next month. But Southgate also addressed today the rise in fan violence in football. The recent pitch invasions have brought the behaviour of fans into question, and Southgate believes it's an issue that goes beyond football.
There's clearly a responsibility within football, because when it's in our environment, we've got to do all we can to try and make sure it doesn't happen. So I think we all recognise that. But it's a wider problem. You know, it's behaviour, and it's a reflection on where we are as a country at the moment. So it's a difficult time for people. I think we're going to have more difficult times because of the economy and the realities of the situation we're in. But we have to look at what we're doing in terms of parenting, in terms of everything, really. What are the expectations? How do we want to be viewed as a country? Because that's manifesting itself in football at the moment, and that's not a good look.
Interesting. And
Interesting is right.
In terms of the last couple of weeks, I mean, the pitch invasions and everything like that and the fallout from that, I mean, the next line we have there is that 3 Dorset police officers were reprimanded and asked to reflect on their actions after taking part in a pitch invasion while off duty. So I mean, 3 off-duty police officers involved, and that was when Bournemouth gained promotion back to the Premier League. But I mean,
is that so bad?
It's not. But I think the problem is one incident in one pitch invasion is enough to justify action across all the different pitch invasions that happen, I think. You know, the headbutt on Billy Sharp is just crazy stuff, and then obviously the City one at the weekend as well.
I think there's room for nuanced punishments, though. You know, I think that fans need to know that there's levels of what's acceptable and what's not. You know, and I think, and there is a punishing the majority for one idiot or 2 idiots. That's just has to be done. I think a celebratory pitch invasion that goes no further than that is one thing. Well, running like a rhinoceros into the head of Billy Sharp is another thing.
Totally, I think that's absolutely right. Yeah. What's wrong with a joyous
but is there
celebration at a moment like promotion?
Is there something to Roy Keane's point in that people have forgotten how to behave after COVID, and it's just people aren't in that mindset anymore, I guess.
I mean, it's certainly become the party line. Anything now that happens,
it's COVID's fault.
Yeah.
But I think maybe there is something in that. Like there probably are repercussions from something so.
But also, I guess if they were to consult the players and all of that, they would probably be against pitch invasions as well, because they're
big
just
time. It's
mobbed.
Well, look, even De Bruyne, who was being surrounded by his own fans, was not in a comfortable space. I do appreciate that. Yeah.
3 players and 2 players and the manager assaulted within a week is a disgrace. And it's interesting to say. I find Southgate so interesting. You know.
That was ballsy enough, by the way.
The start of that clip, you kind of think he's just towing along here, and then he's talking about in a full societal change and what way we raise people in the country. I find that very interesting that he's taking on that kind of discussion. You know, I mean, it's easy enough for him as England manager to bat that off. And he's happy to take it on. Ultimately, I don't think there's anything quick fixing. There's no quick fix in what he's saying there. Whereas, Pat Nevin last night is talking about more policing, and you'd be uncomfortable with that. And I got the sense even Pat was uncomfortable with it. But something has to give. You can't 3 times in a week is a pattern.
I suppose.
And players can't be getting assaulted on the football field by fans. No.
I suppose, though, what you would say is, well, this isn't going to be a problem again until 11 months' time.
Yeah.
No one's going to be running onto the pitch in August.
Jack Grealish was punched in the back of the head at St Andrews 2 or 3 years ago in the middle of the match. You know, and that was serious. That guy went to jail and came out and again, legitimising one idiot by saying what he said. But he came out and was like, I don't regret anything, that was the best day of my life. You know, this nonsense, you know. And it's just, I don't know, I mean, even jail doesn't seem to be enough to discourage this. I'll tell you though, points deductions would be. Because it wouldn't be accepted. If you go on, Man City, I don't think Man City should be stripped of the title, but should they start next year -3 because the Aston Villa goalkeeper was assaulted about 12 times while he was walking off the pitch on Sunday?
Yeah, maybe.
I think so. I think that's a collective issue for Man City fans.
The argument then against that, though, is you get opposition fans putting on Man City jersey, running onto pitch.
I think that's up to the police then to make a report to the Premier League or something like that. I think they'll easily find out if that's the case.
He has a Man United duvet.
This guy with the Liverpool accent is acting and tattoos of liverbirds on his arm.
No, you're right.
He's acting very suspicious.
You're right. That's probably not a strong enough argument. But that's often said when flares are thrown onto the pitch from one end and can easily be done by opposition fans potentially. Yeah, I don't know. There's a fever about it at the moment, and it's copycat, and it's in the ether.
True, yeah.
We do see that when racist incidents happen at matches, there tend to be a slew of them, and then for some reason. That psychologists and sociology types could explain.
Sociologists.
Yes, it does. Sociologists, really? It seems to die down again. So there's something in that. So this won't be happening in August through to next April.
And there is something
come happen again.
Pure about pitch invasions as well, and that we've been at matches, I'm sure, where your team wins and you can just race onto the field and embrace the players and embrace fellow supporters, and nothing negative needs to happen. I mean, it's a brilliant thing. Yeah. That's where memories are created.
There was a text last night about pitch invasions in GA, and Joe, I understand where you took it up, is we don't need to be kind of comparing sports, but let's actually compare even Ireland and Britain or whatever. it's GA is where you're part of pitch invasions a lot in this country, you know, and I've been part of many of them. The idea of violence or whatever is so far from your mind. Like, I mean, I've never seen it, anything like it. Now, you might see it if somebody, you know, like a different type of pitch invasion, like an angry pitch invasion, like in the 2010 Leinster final or something like that. But I mean, in terms of a celebratory one like we've seen this week, it would just never happen. It just never seems like it would be in the air. And not to say this is endemic in English culture or something like that, but it's something that's happening at the moment. It goes back to what Southgate's talking about, you know.
It is what Southgate's talking about, but to be fair, it's also endemic in football culture where the fans are so tribal they can't even be in the same stands. Whereas in GAA, we sit down to somebody from, well, we don't even know who we're sitting down next to. We get there and it's someone from the opposite county. How many times have we been at matches, people shake hands with the losing or winning counterpart beside them, best of luck. So there's just such a different atmosphere. Like, we're blessed, and it'd be a terrible day if we ever lost that. I don't think we ever will.
I've done that handshake, but I won't say what I've said to them in the previous 70 minutes.
Yeah. Whereas, like, I don't know, any time I've been at a Premier League game, I remember being in Liverpool Newcastle, there was like an off the ball prize in 2014. Last day of the season, neither side had anything to play for. 13 it must have been. 13, because 14 obviously was the slip. And it was just a bizarre experience in that, like, I was very near the Newcastle fans at Anfield, and I found myself watching them as much as the game at times, because it was like all these Geordies standing there, shirts off, it was May in fairness, and like screaming at the nearest people, making, I won't make all the gestures, but you can imagine, and like some of them really catch your eye, and they're at it all game, they're not watching the match, and like it's vicious and it's horrible, and you think this is pathetic. Like, it's the only way, it is pathetic. But then I do remember as they were leaving, like a few of the Geordies who had been most vociferous and most like obscene turned around as they were about to go, because they'd caught the eye. They were big lads as well, and they gave like a round of applause to Anfield, and all the Liverpool fans started applauding them back as if like
it's part of the game.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So it's a complicated ecosystem.
Just don't punch players.
That part's simple.
That just keep that away.
Good rule of thumb.
Good advice.
It's a good rule of
We'll
thumb.
argue everything else.
Yeah. So Spurs are going to give Antonio Conte a bunch of cash. Is that the word?
Yeah, Tottenham's owners have invested £150 million into the club as they prepare to back boss Antonio Conte in the transfer market this summer. ENIC have pledged the cash via the issue of convertible shares and accompanying warrants. The additional funds come on the back of Spurs returning to the Champions League after 2 years away. And some news breaking in the last 20 or 25 minutes or so. The Premier League board has today approved the takeover of Chelsea Football Club by the Ted Bowley Clear Lake Consortium. The purchase remains subject to the British government issuing the required sale licence and the satisfactory completion of the final stages of the transaction.
If Spurs give Antonio Conte 100 million to spend, that gets kind of interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100 million. What's that? 2 players?
Yeah.
You know, realistically these days, you know, but they did spend in January as well, like good signings.
And they're starting from fourth, so the 2 players turn them into
if
top four.
There's not really much talk of Kane now as well, obviously with Haaland gone to City, and there's nobody else really for him to go to, so it looks like Kane's staying.
Oh, there was an analysis that Newcastle, with the various financial fair play aspects, could spend 600 million this summer.
Really? I thought they were in some FFP trouble, but obviously that doesn't exist anymore.
One of the few benefits of Mike Ashley running the thing like a business is that they're in great shape to go big.
Yeah, but they did pump in, there was definitely a conversation that they pumped in money into the club in January that wasn't necessarily all just transfer money, which left them just in a little bit of trouble. But obviously you're reading a conflicting report completely, so
600 mil.
If they spent 600 million, like, this is the thing. Tottenham, Man United, Arsenal, all these teams need to be in for everybody and just bump up and just try in some way lessen the impact that Newcastle are going to have by making them spend an extra 50 million on every player that they buy. It's like it needs to be a collective decision here.
Carl, any last story you want to bring us?
Let's bring you news of some golf. Perhaps Bryson DeChambeau has withdrawn from this week's Charles Schwab Challenge on the PGA Tour. The former US Open champion is continuing his recovery from wrist surgery. DeChambeau also pulled out of last week's US PGA Championship at Southern Hills. He's continuing his recovery with that wrist injury.
Okay, fellas, thanks very much, Carl. Cheers.
Cheers.